Good evening. It's Thursday night. I'm recording the Shir of Shabbos Daf Chaf Aleph. I hope that everybody is well and everybody should stay healthy. Hashem Yazor. Maybe I should just start with a small thought I had today. I've been learning Yirmiyah lately, and in Sefer Yirmiyah, towards the end, it talks about Yirmiyah was put into a prison. It's called the Chatzar HaMatorah, because many people didn't like the nevuah that he was saying, and Hashem came to him in nevuah and told him that he's going to have a visit from a cousin, Chanamel, and Chanamel will offer him some land in Anasais to buy, and he should buy it, and he should sign a contract and have witnesses sign it. It should be done in public, and then put the contract into a clay utensil so that it should last for a long time. Hashem says, Yirmiyah listens. Next day Chanamel shows up, and Yirmiyah realizes that it was a true nevuah. Chanamel offers him land. Yirmiyah pays. He has a contract drawn up. He has it signed with witnesses, puts it into clay utensil, and all is well and done. Then Yirmiyah turns to Hashem and he says, Rabbeinu Shalom, Nebuchadnezzar is surrounding Yerushalayim. It's a short amount of time before everything is going to go up in flames. What's the point of me now buying real estate when everything is going to be over? And Hashem responds that Hashem says, I know what I'm doing. I want you to buy real estate and put the document away so that right now, before the Churban comes, you and the people should realize that it's time to start preparing for after the Churban. And when everybody sees that you're buying real estate and putting away the document, it gives everybody courage and hope that there is time to come, there's a future to come, and we'll be past this. Of course, today's problems nowhere near that, but still it's a time when people are in tight situations. The world is in a tight situation. Eden are in a tight situation. It's perhaps an idea, as the Kodesh Baruch Hu told Yirmiyah, to somehow plan something for the future. Yirtzeh Hashem, when this is over, we'll all come out of our homes and we'll be together again. Maybe it's time to plan something now, just something to look forward to. It seems that Hashem felt that would give Yirmiyah and the people chizuk. Anyway. We're starting from the bottom of Chaf Amid Beis, of Eloi Bezefes. So the Mishnah listed various fuels and various materials that are invalid to use as wicks, and various fuels that are invalid to be used as fuel for Neir Shabbos. So far we were talking about things that were invalid to be used as wicks because they don't absorb the fuel well. Then V'loi bezefes, you can't use zefes. Zefes, zifta. Zefes is like a tar that flows out from the trees. And shava is kirusa. Shava is kirusa, and kirusa is wax. So what's interesting is, okay, anyway, so let's continue. So Tana, we learned in a Brayso, Adkan psul psilos. The first part of the Mishnah tells us which fibers are disqualified to use as wicks. Mikan ve'elach, the second part of the Mishnah from Zefes and on, tells us what's psul shmana, what's disqualified to use as fuels. Pshita, it's obvious that the last thing that the Mishnah disqualified as a wick was Yeroika shal pnei hamayim, a type of plant that grows under the ships when they are docked. So you can't spin them into wicks. And afterwards, when we start with Zefes, we're talking about fuels. So pshit, it's obvious. Shavat strichale, the chiddush is wax. Now the tema, I would think, lepsila is nami loichazia. I would think that wax is invalid as a fuel, but maybe it's not valid as a wick either. Kamash malan, that it's invalid as a fuel but it's valid as a wick. And what does that mean, that wax is valid as a wick? So Rashi and Tosfos both say that it doesn't really mean using wax as a wick, but wax is invalid as a fuel to take lumps of wax and have a wick sitting just between those lumps of wax and light the wick and hope somehow that the wax will be absorbed in the wick. That's not going to work. But to use the wax as a wick, what does that mean? If you actually have what we call a candle, where the wax is tightly bound around a wick, then it's perfectly okay. That's according to Rashi and Tosfos, using the wax as a wick. It's not really a wick, it's a fuel, but it's used tightly around the wick, and that's okay. But the Chachmei Narvana, which Tosfos brings, Bnei Narvana, and the Tshuvas HaGa'onim actually prohibit the use of wax as a fuel, even as a candle. And when the Mishnah says that when the Gemara says that it's okay to use wax as a wick, it literally means to use wax as a wick. But the Maggid Mishnah and the Ritva say that they don't understand it because we don't know how to use wax as a wick. So it's incomprehensible. Maybe they knew how. But let's get back to the Bnei Narvana and the Ga'onim that prohibit using a candle, or prohibit using a candle because you can't use wax as a fuel, even in the form of a candle. So the Ritva says that they probably had inferior wax that didn't burn well, and therefore they prohibited it. So now there's a dispute. The Ritva says that according to the Ga'onim, even though our wax is pure and burns very nicely as candles, and all the noblemen use candles, but since it wasn't allowed in their time, they wouldn't allow it in our time either. And the Bach disagrees, and he says it's fine if the Ga'onim felt that wax candles were no good, and the Chach Bnei Narvana felt that wax candles was no good because they had inferior wax, but today that we have superior wax and clear and pure wax, it glows very well, and therefore we can definitely use wax candles. And so the Shulchan Aruch rules that you can use wax candles, like Rashi and Tosfos. Amar Rami Bar Oven, Itrana Psalta de Zifta. Itran is the residue when you heat tar and there's a residue, a fluid that comes out, that's Itrana, which is disqualified as a fuel. And Shava Psulta de Duvsha, wax is what you get on the loaves of honey. When you extract the honey, there's a wax that remains. L'may nafkamina, why do I need to know that? L'mekach hamemkar. If I sell someone wax and then I take this loaf out from the honeycomb and I remove the honey and I leave the wax, I can sell him that, and he can't say that he wants more refined wax, because wax is wax, and if this is called wax, once I took the honey out, the sale is valid. Tana Rabbanan, the Rabbanan taught in a Braisa, Kol elu sha'amru ein madlikim em b'Shabbos, all these fuels that we cannot use, or all these wicks that you can't use on Shabbos, avaloisen mehem medura, but you are allowed to make a large fire, like in a fireplace, using these fibers which are not good for wicks, but you can use it as fuel in a fireplace. Whether bein lis chamim kenegda, bein lis tamish la'ira, whether you're using the fireplace for warmth or for light, bein al gabi karka, bein al gabi kira, whether it's on the ground, or like little campfire, or whether you're using it in a stove. It was only prohibited to make a single wick from these fibers for a candle, because there it may flicker and you might come to tilt it. When you make a large fire, the large fire will burn well enough. Shemen kik is a disqualified fuel. My shemen kik, what is shemen kik? Amar Shmuel says, Sheltinu l'kol nechayse yama. I asked all the sailors, v'amruli, and they said, Oif echad yesh b'chrakei hayam. There is one bird by the cities of the sea. Kik shemai, this bird is called kik, and from this bird they take out an oil, which is shemen kik. Rav Yitzchak Breder, Rav Yuda Amar Mishcha de Koza, he says that it's oil made from cotton seeds, cotton seed oil. Rish Lakish Amar Rish Lakish says kikayon diyana. It's seeds that come from a plant called kikayon, which we find in Sefer Yonah, after Yonah that we read on Yom Kippur. Amar Rabba Bar Bachana l'Lidi Chazili, I saw this kikayon diyana. V'litz luliva dami. It's similar to a plant called sluliva. Umidifshikei ravi. It grows by ponds of water, pools of water. Balpum chanusa madlon yosei, and they used to drape it over the entrance of a store, where it gave a good aroma at the entrance and also some shade. Umipartzidoi of the mishcha, from the seeds of this kikoyan you can make oil. Uba'anfohi naichan, and under its branches they rest. Kol brichei demarova, all the sick people of Eretz Yisrael who should have a refuah shalema. Amar Rabba says, Psila shamru chachamim ein madlikim em b'Shabbos. The wicks that the Chacham said we can't use on Shabbos, neishaur misachseches bahen, because the fire jumps. It doesn't. The wick causes the fire to jump. And shmanim shamru chachamim madlikim em, the oils that the Chacham said not to use, neishain nimshachem achar psila, because they do not absorb well into a wick. Boimene Abaye mi Rabba. Abaye asked his Rabba a question. Shmanim she'amru chachamim ein madlikim em b'Shabbos, the oils that are invalid for Shabbos. Ma'u she'yitan l'toichan shemen kol shu. Can you add a little bit of good oil, because then it's going to work well? V'yadlik, and light it. I know that it's going to work, but is that okay if you have, let's say, 80-20? L'moshel, just example of 80% invalid oil and 20% good shemen zayis. Is that okay? V'yadlik migaz rinan. Should we make a decree? Perhaps we shouldn't allow it. Maybe people will use 100% invalid oil, or maybe we shouldn't be concerned. Once it burns well, so what's good is good. Amalei Sarabah says, we don't allow it. My tama, what's the reason? Because I don't allow it. I'm afraid that if you allow people to use 80-20 invalid with valid, which works, they'll come to use 100% invalid, and there they will come to tip the candle. I just want to point out that using invalid oils is a gzeira, it's a decree, you might come to tip it. So then why, if you have invalid oil with valid oil, which burns well now, why should we prohibit it? It's a gzeira l'gzeira. We're decreeing a combination of invalid with valid oil because I might use all invalid oil, and that in itself is only a gzeira that you might come to tip the lamp. And the answer is it's all one gzeira. When they prohibited using invalid oils, they were so concerned that they prohibited using it even with a mixture of good oil. Eisavei, so Abaya asks a kasha against his Rebbe. There's a brayso that says, Korach dover shemadlikim bay, al gabi dover shemadlikim bay. Let's say regarding wicks. So you used a fabric which is kosher for a wick, and you wrapped it around a fiber which is not kosher for a wick. So the rule is Eimad Likimbo, the Tanna Kama says it's not good. And Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer, Reb Shimon Gamliel says, Shel Beis Abba, Hayakarchem Psila, Al Gabi Egoiz Madlikin. In my father's house, they would wrap a wick around a walnut and they would light it. So you see that they would, so Ktani Niyas, so it was taught in this Braisa, that in the house of Reb Gamliel Madlikin, they would take a valid fiber and wrap it around the walnut. And they lit it, I think. So you see that attaching the valid to the invalid is good. Amar lei, so Rabba says to Abaye, Adam Maisvatli Meder Reb Shimon Gamliel, instead of asking me from Reb Shimon Gamliel, again, I said that you can't mix valid oil with invalid oil. You're showing me that in Reb Gamliel's house, they did allow wrapping valid fiber around invalid fiber. But Sayinu mitanakama, you can prove my point from the Tanakama. The Tanakama says that you can't wrap valid fiber around invalid fiber. Was Holei Kasha, that's not a Kasha, says Abaye, Maaseh Rav. Yes, there's a dispute between the Tanakama versus Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, but Shimon ben Gamliel tells us what was actually done. And when you have a testimony about something that's done, that's a stronger proof. So Mikom Kasha, so now we have a difficulty. Rabba says you can't mix valid oil with invalid oil, and here in Rabbi Gamliel's house, they did wrap valid fiber around invalid fiber. And my love, would you not say lahadlik, that they lit the whole thing? So you see that they were lighting with a blend of valid and invalid fibers. And Moses says, no, you misunderstood the whole story, lahakpois. What they did was they wrapped the valid fiber around the walnut, but the walnut was not being lit, of course not. The walnut was the floater that helped the valid fiber, which was a wick, to float in the oil. So ila hakpa is my tamid the Tanakama. So if the walnut is only being used to help the wick float, why would the Tanakama prohibit it? Where it says the Braita needs some correction. Kula Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel he. The whole Braita is the words of Rab Shimon Gamliel. V'chasuri mechasra v'chiktani. The Braita was missing some words and should be read as follows. Korach davar shemadlikim bay al gabi davar she'emadlikim bay. If you wrap fiber that is kosher to use as a wick around fabric which is not kosher to use as a wick, emadlikim bay, you're not allowed to use it. This is the way Rabbah interprets it. The same way you can't put valid oil into invalid fuel, the same way you can't put valid fiber around invalid fiber. B'medvar mamurim, when is it prohibited? That's lahadlik, if you're going to light the whole bunch of fiber. Ava lahakpais, but if you're only using the invalid stuff only to float the valid wick, that's fine. Because mutter, Shirab and Shimon Gamliel Aimer, because Reb Shimon Gamliel said, Shal Beis Abba hayikarchim psila gabi egos. That in my father's house, they used to wrap a wick around a walnut, and the walnut helped it float, and that's not a problem. The Gemara asks, Eini, is it really prohibited to add the valid to the invalid? V'omer of Bruna Marav chaylev fat mahutach, that was melted with heat, or kirvei dogim shenimaychu, or the insides of fish that dissolved. You can't use them as a fuel, but adam noisan l'toicha shemen kolshu madlik. But you could add some kosher oil and then light it. So you see that you could add good oil with bad fuel and it works. Gemara says, "Hani mimashchi be'einayim." You should know that the melted fat and the dissolved fish innards, they burn well on their own. They're perfectly okay. Vahani, but the ones that Rabbah disallowed were oils lo mimashchi be'einayu. Those were oils that didn't work well. So if you have fuels that don't burn well and you put a little bit of oil into it, Rabbah doesn't allow it. But here, if the fat is dissolved or the innards of the fish are dissolved, they really burn perfectly well. So then why can't you use it without adding any oil? Because v'gazu rabbanan al chelev mahutach mishum chelev she'ena mahutach. The Rabbanan made a decree. If the fat would have not been dissolved, if the fish innards would have not been dissolved, then it's not good. Therefore, the Rabbanan prohibited it even when it's dissolved and even when it's melted. And because the Rabbanan al chelev mahutach mishum chelev she'ena mahutach, the Rabbanan made a gzeira when it's dissolved because of the chelev that's not dissolved. Al kirvei dagim shenimaychu mishum kirvei dagim sheloi nimaychu. They prohibited the insides of fish that are dissolved because of the insides of fish that are not dissolved. So really, again, undissolved fat and fish innards don't burn well, but dissolved ones burn very well, and the Chachamim prohibited the dissolved ones because you might come to use the undissolved ones. So v'ligzer nami chaylev mahutach v'kirvei dagim shenimaychu shenasan l'toichan shemen. So why don't we decree further that even if you have dissolved fat and dissolved fish innards, when you added some oil into it, mishum chaylev mahutach v'kirvei dagim shenimaychu shenasan l'toichan shemen, because you might come to use the dissolved fat or dissolved innards that you didn't put oil in. The answer is higuf gzeira, bananekim nigzer gzeira l'gzeira. It's a gzeira, I don't make a gzeira l'gzeira. Let me explain. There's A, B, and C. A is chaylev that's not dissolved, and kirvei dagim that are not dissolved, and they're no good. B is when it is dissolved, and that would be perfect. But when the Rabbanan prohibited A, they already prohibited A and B. But C is where you add a little bit of oil to it, that's already another step. And we're not going to decree when you add oil to it because of B and A, because B already was a gzeira. One more time. A is chaylev and kirvei dagim that are not dissolved, and that's no good. B is when it's dissolved and it's perfect. But B was prohibited because you might come to use A. So it was prohibited. But now if you add oil to it, that's C. I'm not going to prohibit C because you might come to do B when B was only prohibited because you might come to do A. Tani Rami Bar Chama taught in a brayso, Psilos ishmanim shamru chachamim ein madlikim em b'Shabbos. The wicks and oils that are invalid for Shabbos, they're deficient, is ein madlikim b'hen b'mikdash. You can't use it in the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash either. Mishum shene'emar lahalois ner tamid, because it says three words to light ner tamid. Who? He, Rami Bar Chama Tani lo taught the brayso, V'hu amar lo, and he explained it, since it says lahalois, not lahadlik, ner tamid, but lahalois, means lahalois means it should rise, and it should rise consistently and smoothly. Kedei shetei shalevis oila miyaleo, so the flame should go up by itself. Not that the flame should rise because you're going to adjust it with tipping it or helping it out. So the same way that on Shabbos you're not allowed to use inferior oils and wicks because you might tip it on Shabbos, the same way you can't use it in the menorah because the menorah is supposed to burn consistently and smoothly by itself. Tanan, there's a Mishnah in Sukkah that on Simchas Beis HaShe'eva they made big menorahs, and mibeloi michnasei kahanim im hamyoneim, from the worn out pants of the kahanim and their belts, hayu mafkiyan, they used to tear strips, umeyan hayu madlikian, and these were the wicks that were used. The question is, the pants of the kahanim were linen, and linen burns well, but the belt was made of tchelis, argoman, telas, shani, which are three kinds of wool, and sheish and linen. And since it was wool to linen 3-to-1, so how can you use wool? Wool is no good. Elamai, because you added linen. But it's outnumbered, so how can you use it? You said you can't use it in the Mikdash. Simchas Beis HaShe'eva Shani. Simchas Beis HaShe'eva is different. The menorah in the Mikdash, it says lahalois ner tamid. There's an obligation lahalois, it has to burn easily and smoothly. On the other hand, in the lamps that were used for Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, it doesn't say lahalois, and therefore you can even use big wool wicks. It just said before that wool like just crackles and burns up immediately, but there were probably huge clumps of wool, and therefore they did burn. Toshima, I'll bring you another proof. The Tani Rabbi Bar Masna Torah Braisa, Big Day Kuna Shabalu, clothing of the Kahanim that wore out, Mafki and Aisan, they used to tear strips, Mehena Yoisim Silas Lamigdash, and they used to make wicks for the menorah. So you see, they used to make wicks of the menorah from the garments of the Kahanim. My love, would you not say the Klayim, that they even used the belt which was Klayim, it was made of blue and purple and red wool and linen, but therefore you see that it was wool, and they were using wool which was an invalid fiber as wicks for the menorah. Where it says loy de butz, when they use clothing, they use the pants, they use the shirts, they use the hat, which was all linen, and linen burns perfectly well. Now we start for the next few dafim, the sugi of Chanukah, for the next 3 dafim. Amar Rav Huna said, Psilos ishmanim shamru chachamim eim adlikim em b'Shabbos. The wicks and oils which the chachamim said you can't use on Shabbos, eim adlikim em b'Chanukah. You shouldn't use them for Neres Chanukah either. Bein b'Shabbos, bein b'Chol. You can't use it on a Friday night for Chanukah candles, and you can't use it during the week either. Amar Rav explains, why not? My Tama, the Rav Huna, why does Rav Huna prohibited to use it during the week and on Shabbos? Because he holds kavsa zokaklo. He holds that if the Neres Chanukah somehow go out, you have to relight it. So therefore he doesn't want you using deficient wicks or oils, because if it does go out and you don't relight it, then you aren't yaitza. So therefore don't use deficient oils and wicks in the first place. And that's the story for during the week. He also holds mutar l'shtamish la'ira. He holds that you're allowed to read by the light of Ner Chanukah. So if you're allowed to read by the light of Ner Chanukah, don't use deficient oils and wicks, because if it's going to flicker, you might come to tip it. So we have 2 reasons why you can't use deficient oils and wicks on Chanukah. During the week, it's because if it goes out, the halacha is you have to relight it, and if you won't, then you won't be yaitza, so it's better not to start up and use deficient oils and wicks. On Shabbos, we have an additional reason that since you're allowed to read by Neres Chanukah, says Rav Huna, therefore I'm afraid if you use deficient oils and wicks, you might come to tip it. Taisvus asks, how do you know that Rav Huna held both reasons? Maybe he simply held that if the Ner Chanukah goes out, you have an obligation to relight it, otherwise you won't be yaitza. During the week, I'm afraid you won't relight it, and on Shabbos, you won't be able to relight it. So that itself is the reason why you can't use deficient oils and wicks. Why did you have to add the second reason? So Taisus answers that since Rav Huna made a double statement, he said you can't use it neither on Shabbos nor during the week. He didn't just say you can't use it, but he said you can't use it neither on Shabbos nor during the week. So it sounds like there's 2 reasons. The reason you can't use it during the week is because if it goes out and you don't relight it, you're not going to be yaitza. And on Shabbos, there's another reason not to relight it. So what's interesting is During the week, if somebody doesn't have good oil and wicks, so the Beis Halevi says if he doesn't have good oils and wicks during the week, he should light anyway. You know, better take a chance. I hope it's not going to go out, and if it does go out, I hope he relights it. You got nothing to lose. But on Friday night, you're not going to be able to light it, because on Friday night we have a fear you might come to tip it. So there's a difference in reason A and reason B. Reason A, which is kavsa zakakla, if it goes out, you have to relight it, and if you don't, you're not yaitza, is a reason why you should use good oil and wicks, but if you don't have, you can, during the week, light it anyway. But on Shabbos, there's another reason, not because of kavsa zakakla, but because you might come to tip it, and therefore on Shabbos, you're not allowed to use it. The halacha is kavsa and zakakla, but we'll talk about that in a second. Rav Chisda says madlikim and b'chayil avaloi b'Shabbos. Halacha is you can use inferior wicks and oils during the week, but not on Shabbos. Why? Because he holds kavsa that if it does go out ein zakakla, you don't have to relight it. So if you don't have to relight it, there's no problem of using inferior oils and wicks. Now I must explain something important. When you use inferior oils and wicks, most probability is going to last a half an hour. Because if it's not going to last a half an hour, then you're not yoytze the mitzvah, because the mitzvah is a hadloka oisa mitzvah. You have to, at the time of lighting, have the oil and wicks that's going to last for a half hour. If not, you're not even yoytze. So therefore, we must say that it's normally going to last. The only thing is, what happens if it does go out? So don't worry about it. Kav saying zakakla. You don't have to relight it. Therefore, you can use inferior oils and wicks. But he holds mutter l'shtamish lo'ira. He holds that you're allowed to use the light. So if you're allowed to use the light, then you're not allowed to use it on Shabbos because you might come to tilt the light. A third view is Amar Reb Zeir, Amar Rav Masna. Rav Zeir is said in the name of Rav Masna. Amar lo, some say Amar Reb Zeir, Amar Rav. The psilas ishmanim she'amar chachamim eimad likim and b'Shabbos. The wicks and oil that you can't use on Shabbos because they're deficient and you might come to tip the lamp on Shabbos. Madlikim behem. For Chanukah, they're perfect. You can use them during the week, you can use them on Shabbos. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah explains logically, my Talmud Rav. What's the reason that Rav said that it's allowed? Because he holds if it goes out, you don't have to relight it. So therefore, if you don't have to relight it, as long as probably it would have lasted a half an hour, says the Brisker Rav, then I'm okay. And even if it goes out and I don't relight it, I will still yaitzin. He also holds Asur l'shtamish lo'ira. You're not allowed to read by the light of Neir's menorah, of Neir's Chanukah. So if you're not allowed to, there's no fear you might tip it, so you can use deficient oils and wicks even on Shabbos as well. Rashi points out, why is it Asur to read by the light of Neir's Chanukah? Because you should be able to recognize that it's a Ner mitzvah. You should see that it's a mitzvah, but not because it's Kodesh and you're having enough from Kodesh. Because since Ner Chanukah, the Rabbanan can't make it Kodesh. The Torah can make something Kodesh. The Rabbanan can give you a mitzvah, and it would be a disgrace to use the mitzvah for personal use. Anyway. So it's very logical that if you're allowed to use the inferior wicks and oils in the weekday and in Shabbos, it's very logical. The reason is because Kav saying zakakla, you don't have to relight. So you can use inferior oils and wicks. And on Shabbos, you're not allowed to use the light. If you can't use the light, so you can also use inferior oils and wicks. What's interesting is Amru Rabbanan Kamed Abai, the Rabbanan repeated Reb Yirmiyah's explanation of Reb Zeir Amar Rav Masna or Reb Zeir Amar Rav to Abaye. V'loi Kibla. Abaye did not feel Reb Yirmiyah was an adequate scholar, and therefore he didn't accept the explanation, even though it's very logical. Kiyasa Ravin came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Amru Rabbanan Kamed Abaye Mishmei Rabbi Yochanan. The Rabbanan now repeated the exact same explanation to Abaye, but now they quoted it because Ravin brought it from Israel in the name of Rabbi Yochanan v'Kibla, and he said, now I accept it, that the reason you can use it during the week is because if it goes out, you don't have to relight it. The reason you can use it on Shabbos is because you're not allowed to use the light anyway. And then he added, ruefully, sadly, Omar Izakoi, had I merited, Gemirta Lishmaita Mikara. I would have learned it in the first place when you told it to me in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah. I wish I would have accepted it earlier. What's the difference? V'agamra, in the end, he accepted it. Nafkamina, the difference is, Ligirsa the Yankasa. When you learn something when you're younger, you remember it longer. I don't know how much of a gap there was between when Abaye heard it in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah and he didn't accept it, and later he heard it in the name of Rabbi Yochanan and he did accept it, but somehow it seems that he was disappointed that he hadn't learned it earlier, because the earlier he would have learned it, Girsa the Yankasa, what you learn when you're younger, Le Mishtakcha, is not forgotten. I think I once heard that the Ger Rebbe's brother asked him, what you learn when you're younger is not forgotten, up to what age is called Girsa the Yankasa? So he said he once saw in a sefer that Girsa the Yankasa is up to the age of 40, that you'll remember better. So his brother asked him, in which sefer did you see it? He said, I saw that after I was 40. The Gemara asks, is kavsa ein zakakla? Is it true that if it goes out, you don't have to relight it? Or minhu, I'm going to ask you a contradiction from a brisa. The brisa says mitzvasa, the mitzvah of ner Chanukah mishatishka achama, when sunlight disappears, that's when the stars come out, achetich regel menashuk, until people stop walking around in the street, which is a half an hour. So my love, would you not explain that? Nespa, the kavsa, that if it went out, hoder matlkla, you have to light it at Seisek Achavim, and it must burn until a half an hour, and if it goes out, it probably means you have to relight it. The Gemara says, no, you don't have to relight it. But the ilo adlik, if you didn't light it right away at Seisek Achavim, madlik, you can still light for the first half an hour. So Taisa says, if that's true, then you better be careful to light it between Seisek Achavim the first half an hour. But then Taisa says, in the olden days, since they lit Neres Chanukah for the people in the street, so you only had a half an hour. But today, when we light Neres Chanukah for the people in the house, you can even light later. V'inami, another explanation of the half an hour is l'shiura, that you have to have enough oil in it that it should last for half an hour. But it doesn't mean that if it goes out, you have to relight it. But originally, when you light, it should, could, and would have to have the fuel to last for half an hour. Until people stop walking in the street, ad kama, and how long is that? Until the legs of the Tarmudoi are no longer in the street. The Tarmudoi were like an interesting kind of little nation or people that they used to sell sticks of wood that were used for firewood to make a fire in a stove or on a fireplace. So people would come home at Seisek Achavim and they would see that they have to make a fire in the house. If they saw they had no wood, they went out into the street and they bought wood from the Tarmudoi. I mean, I'm assuming that the Pirsumei Nisa of your Neres Chanukah is not to be mefarsim to the Tarmudoi. But since there are Jews going out into the street buying wood from the Tarmudoi, so there's Pirsumei Nisa for half an hour. After half an hour, everybody's already sitting in the house and staying home. Taner Rabbana, the rabbis taught in the Brisa, everybody knows this, mitzvahs Chanukah ner isha beisai. The basic mitzvah of ner Chanukah is you light one candle per night. You light the same one candle the first night as you light one candle on the last night, and it doesn't matter how many people you have in the house. But Mahadran, if you want to do better than that, you make a ner l'kol echad v'echad. You count up, let's say if you have 5 members of the household, every night you light 5 candles to demonstrate how many people you have in the house. Mahadran, Bina Mahadran, if you want to do even better than that, so Beishamai says, Yom Rishon Madlik Shmoina Mikam Ve'elech Peiches Ve'elech. Beishamai says on the first day you light 1 until the 8th, and on the first day you light 8, and then on the last night you light 1. You go 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Beisil Yom Rishon Madlik Achas Mikam Ve'elech Moise Ve'elech. Beisil says on the first day you light 1, and then you go from 1 to 8. It has been said by Leo Kitov wrote about it, that he has proofs in many places. The Beishamai looks at potential and Beis Hillel looks at what has been realized. So Beishamai says on the first day there was 8 days of potential miracle, and so it went down until the last day there was only 1 day of potential miracle left. Beis Hillel looks at what has been achieved, and the first day you achieved 1, until the 8th day you achieved 8. There is a big machlokes between Tosfos and the Rambam. Tosfos says that option 3 replaces option 2, meaning to say you can choose, if you have 5 people in the house, so you can light 5 candles every night and everybody knows that the 5 members of your family are celebrating Hanukkah. Or if you want, you can demonstrate what night of Hanukkah it is, so you light from 1 to 8, but only one menorah from 1 to 8. The option of 1 to 8 replaces showing what night of Hanukkah is, replaces showing how many people are in the family. But if you're going to multiply the night of Hanukkah times the people of the house, nobody's going to know what's going on. You're going to light 30 neighbors, nobody's going to know whether you have 5 people in the house, it's the 6th night of Hanukkah, or 6 people in the house on the 5th night of Hanukkah. So there's no point. You either choose to light every night according to the number of people you have in the house, or choose every night to light according to what night of Hanukkah it is. But the Rambam holds that it's one on top of one. In other words, if you want to do route B, you light 5 each night. But if you want to do the better, then the Balabais would light 5 neiros the first night, and 10 the second night, and 15 the third night, until on the 8th night the Balabais would light 40. The Ramah, which Ashkenazim follow, have every member of the household light, which comes out the same number of neiros as the Rambam holds, the number of people times the number of nights, but it's not the way the Rambam said it. The Rambam had the Balabais lighting all those neiros, and the Ramah has every individual lighting all those neiros. Amar Ula says, Pligi Batra Amaroi B'Marava. There is a dispute between two Amarom in Eretz Yisrael. There was Rabbi Yossi bar Rav and Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida. Chadam one says, Tamad de B'Shamai Keneged Yamim Manachnasim. B'Shamai counts how many days are yet to come. That's what we talked about, the potential days. B'Tamad de Beis Hillel Keneged Yamim Hayotzim. And Beis Hillel talks about the days that have been already achieved. B'Chadam one says, Tamad de B'Shamai Keneged Parei Achag. The reason for B'Shamai is similar to the bulls of Sukkot. The bulls of Sukkot went from 13 on the first day of Sukkot to 7 on the 7th day of Sukkot in a diminishing order. And the time of the Beis Hillel is because Ma'alim b'Kodesh ve'Maridin. In Kodesh things, you go higher, you don't go lower. So you go from 1 to 8. Question is, what do the bulls of Sukkot have to do with Neres Hanukkah? So the Maharsha says, look, really Beis Hillel is right. The Ma'alim b'Kodesh, in Kodesh you should always go higher, like from 1 to 8. But if you have a good reason, then we're not going to do Ma'alim b'Kodesh. For instance, and the bulls of Sukkot that go from 13 to 12 to 11 to 10 and so on, is because ultimately they amount to 70, and the descending number shows that the power of the Ummah Sa'ilam will descend. So when there's a good reason, the good reason overrides Ma'alim b'Kodesh. So therefore Beishamai holds that here also there's a good reason to show the days that are coming in, to show how many days we still have, we're showing the potential, and that's a good reason to override Ma'alim b'Kodesh. There's an important difference between the two reasons for Beis Hillel, whether according to Beis Hillel it's Keneged Yomim HaYotzim, to show how many days we've had, or because Ma'alim b'Kodesh v'loi Maridin. There are many differences. I'll show you just one. What happens if it's the 3rd night of Hanukkah and you only have 2 candles? So if you want to demonstrate what night of Hanukkah it is, there's no point in lighting 2, because tonight is 3. So light 1. 1 is good enough. One is a minimum. But if you hold Ma'alim b'Kodesh v'loi Maridin, unfortunately I can't go up to 3 because I don't have 3. But don't go down to 1 because Ein Maridin. So the difference will be if on the 3rd night of Hanukkah you have 2. If it's to show what night of Hanukkah it is, don't bother, just light 1. But if it's because you don't want to go down, so last night you lit 2, light 2 again. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught in the Braisa, I skipped. Amar Rabba bar B'chanan Rabbi Yochanan, he said, Shnei Zkenim hayu b'Tzidan, there were 2 elder people in Tzidan. Echad Asa Kebei Shammai, 1 lit from 8 to 1. Echad Asa Kedivra Beis Hillel, 1 lit from 1 to 8. Zen Noisin Tam Lidvorav Keneged Parei Achag. So according to the Maharsha, he explained that even though normally it's Ma'alim b'Kodesh, but since there's a good reason, just like by Parei Achag, so here there's also a good reason to show the potential days that are left, and therefore he lit from 8 to 1. Zen Noisin Tam Lidvorav Ma'alim b'Kodesh ve'Maridin. He held like Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel says Ma'alim b'Kodesh and ve'Maridin, and Beis Hillel anyway holds you show how much miracle have we already enjoyed. What have we achieved? The first day we achieved 1, the second day 2, until the 8th day 8. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught in the Braisa, Ner Chanukah mitzvah lanichal pesach beisa mibachutz. The mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is to put it at the doorway on the outside. In Dor Ba'aliyah, if you live upstairs, menicha b'chalayin asmucha l'rshus harabim, you put it in the window facing the street. Ubishas sakana, there was a certain sect of Persians, I think they were Chaborim. They had this idea that when it was their festival day, the only candles that could be lit would be only in their place of worship. And if they caught anybody, it was dangerous. So menichal shulchanai. So if you can't put it in the window, put it on your table, or you can't put it outside, so you put it on the table vidayo, and that's enough. Amar Rava says if you put it on the table, so it looks like it's your candelabra. So tzarf ner acheres l'shtamish l'oira. You need another ner to use the light of the other ner. It shouldn't look like you're using the ner of Neres Chanukah. V'i ika madura. And if you have a fireplace, you have a big fire, so then leitzarach, you don't need another candle because you're using the light of the fireplace. V'yodam chashavu, and if you are a nobleman who generally does not use light from a fireplace, The nafik avdika medura, even though there is a fireplace, tzarech ner acheres, you have to have another candle next to your neres Chanukah, because you usually normally you use neros, candles for your light. So it look like you're using neres Chanukah, so you have to have another ner to show that I have light from the other ner. My Chanukah. What is Chanukah? The Tanur Rabbanan, the Rabbanan taught in a brisa called Megillas Tanis, which documented all the days of celebration that happened in Bayis Sheni. B'chav Hei B'Kislev, on the 25th of Kislev, Yom B'de Chanukah, are days of Chanukah. T'manya Inun, they are 8. The Loy L'Mispat behind, the Loy L'Sanas behind, we cannot make a spedim and we cannot fast. Shekishenichnos Yivanim La'echol, when the Yivanim came into the Heichol, Timu Kol Hashmanim Sheva Heichol, they were metame all the oil in the Heichol. Ukshegav Malchus Beis Chashmonai v'Nitzcham, when the kingdom of Beis Chashmonai became stronger and they conquered the Yivanim, Badku, they searched, the Leimatzum couldn't find, Elapach Echad Shal Shemen, only one jug of oil, Sheimunach B'chaisom Shal Kohen Gadol, lying with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, and they could tell that it wasn't touched. There was only enough oil to last for one day. And Nasa, by Nes, a miracle happened, but Liko Mimena, they lit Shmeina Yomim, 8 days. L'Shana Acheres, the following year, they realized that this was a miracle that's worthy to commemorate. So Kivoim, they established it, Vasam, they made it Yomim Tovim, and Bahalel V'Haidah. So besides for lighting Neiris, we also say Halal, and we say Al Nisim in Haidah, in Moedim, in Tefillah, and in Noidelacha, in benching. Tosfos points out that there is a halacha that a klicheres, a clay utensil, can be makabel tumah when you move it. So even though it was sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, how do you know that it wasn't moved? So the answer is it was embedded somewhere in the ground where you saw that it hadn't been moved. It's also interesting to note that in Al Nisim on Chanukah, in the Bimei Matisyo, it doesn't talk about the miracle of 1 to 8. And here it doesn't really talk about the miracle of the war. The answer is because here the Bryce is explaining Yoime de Chanukah Tmanya Inun. The days of Chanukah are 8. And why 8? Because there was a miracle that Shemin that should have lasted 1 lasted 8. But when we thank Hashem Ala Nisim, when we thank Hashem for miracles, we're thanking Him for the miracle of winning the war, of the Rabbim Biad Ma'atim. Because had we lost the war, but somewhere in a cave, the Menorah would have lasted for 8 days, there would be nothing to celebrate about. So we have a holiday because of the miracle of the war. Bimei Matisyo, Rabbim Biad Matim, Tmeim Bat Hayrim, Rishon B'Yad Tzadikim, V'Zeidim B'Yad Oiski Sarasecha. But the reason why it's 8 is because of the miracle of the Neiros. Tinan Hassam, there's a mission in Bavakama, Gates HaYotzim Metachas HaPatish V'Yotza V'Hizik. If a spark comes out from the hammer of a blacksmith and it does damage somewhere, Chayiv, the blacksmith, has to pay for damages. Gomel Shaton Pishtin Va'ever B'Shus Harabim. If a camel is overloaded with flax, it's walking through the street, V'Nechtas Pishtanu L'Toich HaChanus, and the flax went into the store where V'Dolka B'Nei Shel Chan V'Ning, and it caught fire with the storekeeper's candle. V'Hidlik Asabir, then the camel went on and set fire to some house where it got there. Balagomel Chayiv, the owner of the camel is Chayiv, because it's his animal that did the damage, and it's his fault that the flax caught fire inside the store. If the storekeeper had a candle outside, which is illegal, so now the storekeeper is chayiv for eish. He put fire in a place where it could be carried and do damage. But Rabbi Yehuda Aimer b'ner Chanukah poter. If the storekeeper had his ner Chanukah outside, he's poter, because on Chanukah you have the right to keep your ner Chanukah outside. Amar Ravina makes an observation. Zoysa Meris, I guess this tells us that ner Chanukah mitzvah lanicha b'toich hasora. That ner Chanukah must be kept pretty low, below 10 tefachim. Because these al kedatach l'malam yasar, because if a ner Chanukah could be placed higher than 10 tefachim and very high, in lay malay, then the owner of the camel should tell the storekeeper, I know you want to light ner's Chanukah, but hoy l'chol aniach l'malam yigamel v'roichvay. You could have put your ner's Chanukah higher than the camel and rider, nothing would have happened. So it must be that the store owner would say, I'm sorry, I have to keep my ner Chanukah less than 10 tefachim high. Gemara says, no, it could be that you could put the ner Chanukah higher, as long as it's less than 20 amas high. But the storekeeper could say that the Chacham allowed me to light lower, because if you're going to make me get on a ladder to light it, so I avoid your camel and the rider, then the storekeeper might not want to bother with Neres Chanukah. So therefore, storekeeper could have lit it higher, but he has a mitzvah to light Neres Chanukah, and we're not going to trouble him, and he's allowed to light it lower. And if he lights it lower, and the camel is not careful, the owner of the camel is not careful, it's the owner of the camel's fault. Okay, Kol Tuv, this is a shir for tonight and for tomorrow morning. Emir Hashem, I'll upload Be'ezus Hashem tomorrow early afternoon the shir for Shabbos, which you can see it before Shabbos instead of Shabbos morning, and you can see it Matzah Shabbos instead of Shabbos afternoon. Baruchim Tiyu Kulchem, everybody should be gebenched. And again, Belzer Rebbe once said that people should be careful with traffic regulations the way it's Aseres HaDibros. Because we're religious people, so because of our religion, we are extra careful to follow all the requirements of the health department, and we make every precaution and every safety precaution to make sure so the Be'ezus Hashem, if we keep it very carefully, like the Aseres HaDibros, Hashem will help. We shouldn't hear of any harm, and Hashem should help that this whole thing should pass and minimize the tzaras. Kol Tuv.